I think you all know the context, and for those who shall see the video at a later date, I think this hint is enough for Google to remind the condition of the times we live in. It is quite common in comic world for dead characters to return. Similarly, we see the resurgence of an old character in the discourse of the netizens these days. And as is the scenario oftentimes, director loses his creative control over a character's interpretation, or should I say, doctor. Vasigaran loses his control over Chitty. What did the movie Shaurya want to preach? I don't think anyone cares. There are many movies and many messages out there in the world already, but one of the movie's characters, the one that keeps returning in public discourse every now and then, there are not many characters like that one, and hence he remains relevant. Let's discuss. In the movie Rawan, Pratik wanted a villain who never loses. His overprotective father, who maybe had different sensibilities, tried explaining him why villains must lose and why heroes must be rooted for. To please his son, he makes a stronger villain, but the weaker G1 had a stronger backstory. Hence, when both of them came out of the simulation, audience rooted for G1. But what if it was the other way round? We see the character of Brigadier Pratap, who has a very strong aura. He can be intimidating if you are his junior. Even if you are not, his mere presence makes you feel subordinate. He is not the type who insults someone verbally. He casts a strong shadow of perfection and confidence on others who start doubting the quality of their own character in comparison to Brigadier. We notice he is extremely calculative. He has a clear idea about the shoot speed of his golf ball, the speed of enemies' bullets, and the relative distance. Hence, when he sends you to retrieve one of his golf balls, it is only to test your obedience. He has a clear idea when to call you back and inform you that a soldier's life is worth more than a golf ball. Well, it's a common sense that a human life is inherently worth more than any object, but why does Brigadier think so? Especially when he himself declares human rights end at least 100 kilometers from the border. There is a scene with Major Siddharth, who we can recognize as the character against Brigadier Pratap in the court scene, and also who happens to be the protagonist in the movie. So the character has come to meet Brigadier Pratap in his zone of duty. Obviously, he is visibly dominated by Brigadier's character, and he tries to cut short their meet by seeking permission to leave.
No, Major.
It is an iconic scene. He gives detailed expenditure analysis for a cup of coffee to make it to that altitude. Fuel cost, labor cost, etc.
उसे respect करना बहुत ज़रूरी है. So finish your coffee.
This gives us the earliest hints about how the character thinks. So one may guess, maybe the resources required to raise and train a soldier is significantly higher compared to get a new golf ball. Somehow we can't convince ourselves that the character thinks so shallow. He is a round character, and his thought process is actually very meticulously crafted. Now here is a person who guards boundaries. In his professional sphere, he must hate infiltrators who physically cross those lines. But since the philosophy of a person remains same, we see him having low opinion about people who cross the limits of their pockets by using credit cards. Brigadier is a fan of purity, hence single malt, classical music and Shaurya, but he commands purity in expression and diction.
Big sweat, Malhotra. Men perspire.
He hates adulteration, right? He doesn't like the generation who don't have a clear choice and says,
क्या लोगे, Major?
Anything, sir.
And certainly if he feels there is adulteration in the patriotism of a particular group, he would dislike them. He is got a backstory. Actually, as we compare it to General Dyer's portrayal in Kashari 2, the movie showed he had a backstory too. Some harsh personal experiences, trauma, hatred against the collective identity of culprits involved in those memories. This is supposed to be the common hamartia, but we never sympathize with Dyer because we never liked the character in the first place. We have a collective hatred for the person even before we see him in the movie because we all know what he has done historically. Here, Brigadier Pratap being a fictional character, and fortunately for him within the scope of the movie, and unfortunately for a national discourse beyond the scope of the movie, the director decides to associate the character with a high-integrity uniform. This somehow makes the audience enter the stream of consciousness of Brigadier more comfortably and try to understand why he thinks whatever he thinks. Coming back to the fate of the character within the plot, every strong character has a weak point. Duryodhan had a thigh, Achilles had a heel. Brigadier himself gives the clue. He calls Major Siddharth on dinner the previous night and tries to trigger him emotionally by talking about what condition dead body of Major Siddharth's father was found in, who gave the supreme sacrifice for the country. Major Siddharth, being chosen as the protagonist by the director, does a reverse attack. He tries to trigger Brigadier Pratap inside the court by referring to his past experience, and the character cracks. He has an outburst of emotions, and suddenly he is exposed and suspended with immediate effect. But even while Major Siddharth is giving a final message about true meaning of Shaurya,
जावेद खान की इंसानियत में इंडियन आर्मी का शौर्य छुपा है.
which actually sounds correct, we see Brigadier Pratap standing there with his eyes welled up, and the character both emotionally and morally exposed. Even in this vulnerable state, that character is attractive. My theory is, Pratap grows up to become a better scientist than SRK, discovers time machine, or at least borrows it from one of his scientist friends, goes back in time and disguises himself as the director of this movie to create this attractive and powerful villain. And this time, when Rawan is out of the system, people are not even searching for G1. Or has Rawan disguised himself to look as G1?